tree-based funding, right? We're about the tree. We're about how, you go from tree to tree to tree and you start to build this, this forest. But you have to be very careful about how you do that. Because if something happens on one where it's delayed, it's a little slow, like that tree starts to rot, it could cause all the other trees to rot too. For some of my clients, they get really excited about the cash flow. They have a good handle on it, good understanding of it. Like they love kind of dealing it. I have a client right now who they love to meet with me once a week and kind of go, recast the cash flow every single week on their project. And they love kind of going through that experience and that exercise. But on the flip side, like one of the harder things is not every contract's a good contract, right? That's just, I would say, make sure you have your shit together. Like have everything ready. And I've heard you talk about this a few times, having a report card, like having your finances done, having your bank statements like in a file readily available to you, like having all that information is something you should be doing anyways, just to kind of, so you're keeping track of the business. Mm-hmm. But then also like the turnaround time for what any lender is going to need, you're prepared for that and you can hammer that out quick.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Construction MF'ers Podcast. I am Scott Peper, CEO and founder of Mobilization Funding, and today I'm going to give you guys a new twist and spin on Mobilization Funding with my great friend of 20 years, Joe Ondrejko. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much.
And some people are like, why is your friend on here? Well, he's on here because he also works with me and works with us here at Mobilization Funding, mostly onboarding and taking care of clients directly, as well as many other things. But today, I want to give you all a little insight into Mobilization Funding from someone other than me. So, Joe, welcome.
Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on our Construction MF'ers Podcast. I peeled you off the desk, come down a couple offices into our little studio here, and we'll get after it.
It's fun to get away and do something a little bit different.
Yeah, at least for a little bit.
Yes.
All right, so jumping into it, you and I have known each other now over 20 years, going back to when we were like young pups, prior to me even learning even to play golf for the first time. Why don't you talk about how we met and just give everybody a little insight into how you ended up getting to Mobilization Funding?
You don't have
to cover the whole 20 years.
Yeah, it's a 20-year story.
Yeah.
I think the interesting part of how we met is we met playing basketball. We met competing. It's where I met a lot of my friends. A lot of the people I ended up working with, doing business with, met on the basketball court. And I think you actually know this. I moved to Tampa. This is like 2000, without a job. Just moved here because I thought it'd be a good place to get to start my career. Wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I did know get on a basketball court, start meeting people. Literally, I was on the court that week, met a guy. He liked the way I played basketball, saw I was competitive, saw, had a little grind to me. Clay offered me a job. Yeah. So within the next week, I was working full time in Tampa, doing it that way. And, coincidentally, I met you the same way.
And it turns out we're both from upstate New York. So those fellow upstaters that we've all know each other as. If you don't know what an upstater is, you're not from upstate New York. But if you are from upstate New York, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Exactly.
But the upstaters that leave upstate end up down in Florida or some other portion of the South. Mm-hmm. You usually have a good run at hoops and other sports, as well as different opportunities. So talk about over you've been here now, Mobilization Funding, with us for almost 3.5 years in and out, depending on between a couple different stages.
Yep.
Talk about what you have seen since your time coming here. Like what attracted you to come to Mobilization Funding? And you can certainly should maybe touch a little bit on what you did for those prior 20 years, because it's pretty cool, and then how you've just kind of seen the overall evolution of us and MF.
Yeah, so let's start from the beginning. My career path started out with once I got that first job in Tampa. It was a nice job, but it wasn't my career. I decided to start looking seriously at building a career, and I had an opportunity to join the Tampa Bay Lightning. And once I did that, it was about the same time I met you. I decided that was my path. That's what I wanted to do. And I remember having this conversation with you all the time. Like, Joe, you're ridiculous. You're not making any money. You're working all these hours. Like, get out of this. I'm like, no, I'm going to make this happen. And it moved me away from Tampa, which I know, it took a lot. But we always said we'd find our way back here at some point, right?
That was 20 years ago.
It was 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So from there, I left there, went to a couple different pro sports teams, Colombus Blue Jackets, Philadelphia 76ers, went to a project at University of Notre Dame, helped them with their new stadium build out, and then ended up with the Indianapolis Colts. And in those transitions, like one of the things that I always took with me was it was a little bit of this entrepreneurial kind of like aspect to it, even though I was working for pro sports teams, because I was going into situations where they did not have sales organizations set up yet. So I would come there and build out a sales staff, build out a program, build out a process to really help drive revenue for these organizations. And the entire time, it's one of the things that you and I talked a lot about. Like, I don't have a whole lot of friends that I made after college.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, like, you get on the grind, like, you just don't do that. But you and I, for whatever reason, always kept that relationship going. Did some family vacations. Always, if we were in the same town, always found ways to spend time with each other. Found each other in the randomest places. I was thinking about the other day. I remember you and I bumped into each other at the Final Four in Atlanta and had dinner with my brother and dad one time.
I know.
Do you remember that story?
I do remember that. Like, it was just random. Like, didn't we walk? Like, how did we bump into each other? Because that was...
I have no idea.
I don't even remember why I was there. And I saw your brother randomly also in Miami at Gotham Steakhouse in the Fountain Blue.
Yeah.
And I was at a meeting for medical device, and I saw him sitting there with like 4 other dudes, and I sent them drinks
story,
with a note, which I can't tell the note. Your brother got up and was like, what the heck is going on? For those of you that don't know Joe's brother, of course, none of you probably, you look alike. So it wasn't hard to spot them in the restaurant. So
knowing that we kind of were always associated with others' lives, we got to the point where I think you were starting to get, you had started Mobilization Funding, had this kind of going for a while. And it was really kind of like really digging into it. I saw that and we had those conversations about it. At the same time, that's when we were going kind of through the pandemic. A lot of things were changing. And I thought, if I was going to make another switch, what would I want to do? And what would that want, what do I want that to be? And that's when you and I really started having that conversation. And I thought that, a few things. One, speaking of my brother, I worked with him at the Notre Dame project. And I found that working with friends, working with families, having the opportunity to do something like that is a game changer. It's so much fun. You're not working for the man. You're doing things because you enjoy doing it with each other, which was great. The other part was obviously, we always knew we wanted to get back to Tampa somehow, some way, some aspect. We love the Tampa area. My wife and I met here, married here, first kid, first home. Like all of our firsts were here. And we knew we always wanted to migrate back down here at some degree. And then just the business, as watching it kind of grow from afar at first. Then kind of like, you're like, hey, just come on and, kind of help out, kick in a little bit here and there, and just kind of seeing what it was. And I'll never forget the story. First time I came down, and my wife Crystal knows Scott just as well. Immediately call her up. I'm like, listen, it's legit. Like, he's got fax machines and everything. Like, they're building, they're growing. So at that point, I think I kind of knew if that was the path.
We have copy machines. I don't know if we have a fax machine.
It makes the story funnier. That's what you and I are, though. We're good storytellers.
Yeah, I definitely know fax machines. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think once, kind of seeing that and then actually getting into the business, getting on the business, and really I think and when I first had the conversation about what we're going to do here today, the one thing I thought about in this specific aspect was like building a business is a lot like sales. And one of the things that I always remember, I think it's a Daniel Pink book. He talks about the new ABCs of selling. So it's attunement, it's buoyancy, and it's clarity. And I think those were the 3 things that I really saw that like you had a handle on that was really helping MF kind of grow the direction you wanted to go. Yeah. And really what I mean by that is the attunement part of it is, and this is probably one of the struggles that I had in the very beginning was to be attuned to somebody else's problem or perspective, you really have to understand and know that. And really what we do is get in on the ground level with these other organizations, other businesses, and we really need to understand from their level what they're seeing, what they're facing, how they're feeling about everything. And that takes a little while to get to that level of attunement to, for the client. Yeah. Then the other part of it is buoyancy. And I hear you tell the story all the time, like you have a lot of $1 million mistakes. They're like, and you have to stay even keel. Can't get too high, can't get too low. Just kind of got to float with it and ride it out. And the last part is clarity. And I already knew this about you, but just kind of like how repetitive we are about our core values. Like we have a new wall now with the 5, those 5 things up there. Like the clarity of the vision of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it, I think it's always been there. So when I think about building it, like I kind of went back to like those reminded me of those, those new ABCs.
Yeah, you touched on a few different things that were interesting. Like coming from sports and the sales process, and you have like a tried and true product, right? Like whatever sports team it is, but there's always a new process to how you're going to go about like engaging that product to your audience, which might be the community or corporations or sponsors or whatever, type of engagement it might be. Certainly maybe a little bit different at Notre Dame as well. But now you're here, you're seeing this company who's trying to lend to the commercial construction community and other businesses, manufacturers and others, but really focused on commercial construction. And you're looking at that process and you're trying to say, okay, how do I add value there? And listen, what are some of the things you think we do differently than what might be traditional, quote unquote, like sales?
That's a great question. I wouldn't even put what I do on a day-to-day basis, like even in the category of sales. Because really, like when I think about it, what I was doing previously was I had a solution that I thought was a good fit for, whoever I was presenting to, whatever I was trying to get done. Really what we're doing here is total inverse of that, where yeah, we do have a solution, but that's not how we're driving the conversation. What we're trying to do is understand them as a business and understand what the problem they have, and then try to figure out, maybe we can help, maybe we can't, but we're going to find you help in some capacity, in some level. So in order to do that, you really have to be like kind of, again, attuned to where they're at to really understand and figure that out.
So let's go through like a typical client process from your perspective. Like walk through, you're meeting and talking to clients every single day. When you are talking to them, what is a typical business that's calling here, or we're finding like on average, call up and they say, hey, Joe, here's my problem. Here's my situation. What does that typically look like?
So the first part is there's no typical, right? There's no typical.
Everybody has a different problem.
And the way I thought about this question was two different ways. One, I think the way that companies who are approaching us are kind of coming from different, probably 3 different areas. Either they're newer, they're just starting out and they're looking for like kind of that initial help, and maybe they have a couple things going, but they just need a little ramp up. Second, like they're having a problem. They're in some kind of hole or trouble or something. Something's kind of askew, and they just need some quick quick fix, some quick help. And then there's the final part who I find are kind of a little bit more sophisticated about what their need is and what they're looking for. They understand like how financing can help them, the different financing options that are out there. So all 3 are kind of the same conversation that we're looking for a solution, but all have like kind of 3 different places that they're coming from on like what they feel like their need is.
Is there any commonality to the approach that you take with them, depending on how they're coming, or is every approach different?
No, every approach is the same, and this kind of goes back to even when I was selling Tampa Bay Lightning hockey tickets in 2000, 2001 when they won 15 games versus after 04, 05 when we won the Stanley Cup. Like the approach is always the same, and the approach here is, I don't know if I can help or not. I just want to understand your problem, kind of see from like your vantage point where you stand, and then figure out, are we a good fit? Can I help? Can I help with mobilization funding loans, or is there a different path I can help point you in the direction on? Yeah. So every time it's just like, if I can help, how can I help? I just need to kind of get us to that point.
So one of the things that we talk a lot about and are known for is cash flows, right? We talk about cash flows. Do you feel like when you are discussing with a client a typical scenario, how does cash flow get woven into the conversation? And how does someone typically receive that in terms of what you're asking, what you're bringing up, why you're asking it, and then as they go through the process?
Yeah. And this again, this kind of goes back to a lesson I learned from you when I first started this. When I say cash flow, if I say it to 10 people, it means 10 different things. And we say that all the time about a lot of the terms in financing that, that are being used. Yeah. There's no like one, it means everything to everyone. So really, like when I'm talking about cash flow, it's the difference of when I'm talking to another company about it, the way that they see kind of the forest versus the trees, right? So a lot of times when I say cash flow, they're just thinking of their overall business. Mm-hmm. They're looking at the forest and seeing how things are moving and shaking. And depending on who they are and how they operate, like they could have like 1,000 different ways to kind of, solve the problems that they have. So really for us, it's kind of dialing in, like we're project-based funding, right? We're about the tree. We're about how, you go from tree to tree to tree and you start to build this, this forest. But you have to be very careful about how you do that. Because if something happens on one where it's delayed, it's a little slow, like that tree starts to rot, it could cause all the other trees to rot too. So you have to be very focused on, I think, both. And then getting somebody who's not familiar with how we approach it to kind of come back to our level is really what I try to dial in on the conversation with them.
So when we go into cash flows and someone's looking at like analyzing a loan with us and they're trying to determine whether we're a good fit for them or we can actually help them with a mobilization funding type loan, how does the cash flow process that we go through with them, what are some of the eye openers or some of the insights you hear or the lines you hear or the like how they feel or why, like are they annoyed at first going through that? Do they get excited to, I can't wait to go through this math exercise? Or like, how does that, like, what is the feel for that? Like if you were walking a typical customer that you're introducing this to?
Yeah. Again, there's no typical. So I think for some of my clients, they get really excited about the cash flow. They have a good handle on it, good understanding of it. Like they love kind of dealing it. I have a client right now who they love to meet with me once a week and kind of go, recast the cash flow every single week on their project. And they love kind of going through that experience and that exercise. But on the flip side, like one of the harder things is not every contract's a good contract, right? That's just, and you don't realize that maybe like, and my example I use all the time, there was, a client that he had a $3 million project, but it had, 10% retainage, 15% margin, and 6-day pay terms. But it's a $3 million contract, and he's a $5 million business. He's all excited, like, but that $3 million contract is not cash.
Right.
Like it's not cash in the business. And after we go through the cash flow and he realizes, oh shoot, I'm financing this project on my own, for the first 9 months of it. Like
to make how much, right?
Yeah, to make $200,000. Like you really want to spend $900 to make $200,000, like, and then have that $900,000 sit out there for that period. So a lot of times they don't even realize that until we go through that exercise. So it's really not even a matter of us saying, this is a loan we can or can't do. Is this a job you really want to do?
Right.
And maybe it is. Maybe for that one job, maybe it's worth them because that that GC or whatever that business they're contracting to, they know that it's going to lead to more business. So they're okay making that initial investment. But you better know it going into it.
So you bring up a good point, like saying no going into it or like feel, and you use some like key words there. What can someone expect to feel? Like, how can they expect to feel differently or operate differently? Like, what is going to be the difference between like you doing projects that you've never had a cash flow run on the project before, and you're used to doing that, and all of a sudden now you're going through this like mobilization funding cash flow process, and it's sort of annoying maybe, or maybe you're excited about it, depending on where you fit in the spectrum. But at the end of going through the process, and now you actually execute the job with the information in a flow all laid out for you. Yeah. What are the types of things you see those contractors saying, hearing, feeling?
Yeah. If I've done my job correctly, they're feeling relief. They're feeling relief that, okay, I know how I'm going to get my subs paid week over week. I know that I'm going to have the dollars available, or I know I'm not going to have any surprises coming at me, if things go sideways. So really, I think it's if they're able to have a feeling of relief once they complete the cash flow model with me, that's really the biggest thing I'm driving towards.
And it's not, and do they get relief from like having to scramble around for the rest of the week, or are they worried about other payments from other projects coming in to execute that one, or is everything contained?
It's all contained in that one cash flow. So they know like they have the cash for that job on that job for the duration of the job, and how it's all laid out is they know exactly how it should operate. And should any surprises pop up, we can account for those. We can make those moves as we kind of go through it. So they should feel like, okay, I got this one under control.
What are some of the decisions that you see your contractors able to make when they have a cash flow of their whole project laid out before them, before they ever start? Some of the nuances or things that they go about doing maybe differently with that information they see in front of them than they might not have otherwise.
Yeah, there's a lot of different levers that they can start pulling once we have a plan set up, right? And it's kind of, it really is like anything else in life. Like if you have a plan beforehand, and then you get into it and you start executing, and you see that you have now new levers available to you. So maybe you're able to get the work, hire a couple more subcontractors, get the work pumping a little faster, start being able to bill, invoice a little bit more at the end of the month. You can start making those adjustments, or things go slow. You can kind of peel back a little bit. Like I deal with this all the time. Get a little rainy for a week, so you're pulling some subs off, setting everybody down, like, hey, and then ramping it back up. So you're able to kind of, I guess, adjust the faucet or adjust the thermostat as needed in the job because you have a plan of how everything's going to go.
So at this point, Joe, in 3.5 years, you've seen, I would say, probably 250 to 300 different projects, cash flow, which is, honestly, it might take a typical person running construction company a decade or more to cash flow and execute and watch happen that many projects. So one might call you an expert, right? Or one might say you have a shit ton of experience.
Yeah.
So what are some of the best advice you could offer potential construction companies that are either looking for financing or that are actually trying to determine whether they should do this magical cash flow my project type thing? What is some advice that you would offer them that you see the difference between someone who does it with success and someone who does it with maybe success, but just it makes it a hell of a lot harder?
Yeah. And maybe we can edit this like post-op because it's going to sound salesy. But what I'd say is call me and let's do a cash flow together. Whether you're looking to finance the project or not, doesn't matter to us. Like we want to be able, we offer this tool for free on our website. And if you go and do that, I'm calling you anyways to kind of, review it with you and show you, okay, here's what we're seeing. Here's how we're analyzing the job. Here's the feedback we can give you. And it took me a long time to get to that point where, like, to be effective at this, you kind of have to be a cash flow expert. And to your point, like seeing so many of these, I can kind of now understand where, the opportunities and where the problems might exist and be able to point those out to them, before they even get into the job. So a lot of times, especially once we do have a client that we've worked with a little bit, they'll start doing cash flows with us prior to even bidding, so that they make sure that the job's going to work for them before they even put the bid in on it. And I think that's really what the service that we offer is. We want everybody to have the availability to do a cash flow model with us because we know what a lifesaver is, especially in the construction business.
Is there one or two things that you feel like are like assumptions that are made about cash flow too oftentimes? Like, so I guess is there anything that a contractor typically comes to you with that's just a common assumption that more often than not is just not accurate when you do the cash flow? And they, like, the contractor might say to you, wow, I didn't realize that, or wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah. Is there one or two of those common themes that just maybe you just were not aware of when you do the cash flow and they open their eyes to it?
Yeah, I think, and this is really tough because what makes a good leader, a good business person who has their own business and kind of is out there doing it on their own, one, they have balls, right? Like they took it on themselves to go and do it. Two, typically they're going to be very optimistic about what they can do. And I think being able to look at a cash flow, I'm not trying to take that optimism away from them. I want them to still be optimistic, but let's look at like kind of how could this, how is this actually going to happen? How, because everyone's like, oh no, I'll get it done. It's okay. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And then most of the time they do figure it out, and it's all good. It's all good and great. But again, like having that optimism along with like having that sense of relief, like, okay, I have a set plan. I know how this is going to go. I think that's really kind of the two things that, I think about.
I always like to think of it like, let's be realistic about where these numbers actually are. and then you be very optimistic about what solutions you want to have and put in place. The only difference is now that you have this information right now, you can do it proactively instead of reactively.
Yeah.
And that same optimism still works in your benefit, and the same realism still works in your benefit. The difference is it doesn't happen on a Tuesday and payrolls due Thursday 6 weeks from now.
Yeah.
You can see those things in advance, and then you can use that same optimism without being under the gun, which actually I seem to think a lot of clients, because they're not under the gun, their optimism actually works even more so in their favor, because they can be more creative too with what they're doing, or they're able to use the other aspect of it and really lean in on some of their solutions. Yeah,
and one of the things I love doing with them is when we're doing the cash flow model together, they're like 30-day pay terms are a great payer. It's everything's going to go perfectly. Okay, let's just set the pay terms at 45 days and see how it changes things. And like you can kind of show them like it could go great, and if it doesn't, here's what could happen, and we still have a plan for that.
Yep. All right. So common question we get a lot. People call us up, or if I'm on a webinar, if I'm on someone else's podcast, or we're working a booth or trade show. Common question we get: what's the best way we can prepare to be financed or to get a loan, or how do we qualify? What's the best things we can do? Those are a typical question that we get. And so I'll ask you, what is the best advice you could offer to someone who wants to grow their business, knows they're going to need a lender, trying to find a lending partner, and they really want to put their best foot forward?
I would say make sure you have your shit together. Like have everything ready. And I've heard you talk about this a few times, having a report card, like having your finances done, having your bank statements in a file readily available to you, like having all that information is something you should be doing anyways, just to kind of, so you're keeping track of the business. But then also the turnaround time for what any lender is going to need, you're prepared for that, and you can hammer that out quick. Yeah. And we just did this convention last week where we talked. I forget which bank it was. They were talking about the 3 or 4 C's of of loans.
BMO Harris.
Yeah. And the one that everybody kept repeating on was character. And character does have a lot to do with this. And a lot, your character is shown by your level of preparedness, like how quickly you're able to turn things around. So I think having that stuff ready to go is a really great start.
Yeah, good start. It gives you a certain level of confidence as an owner of what you're putting forward. Yep. You don't have to rely on these stories as much when you have just the facts behind it. And sometimes it doesn't matter if the facts say something bad. We don't necessarily care as much about the financials as the fact that we want to just know where they are. We can finance companies that are losing money. We can finance companies that are break even, and we can certainly finance companies that are making money. All the different scenarios have to do with is where are you starting from, and therefore how can we help you get to where you want to go. But without a starting point, it almost makes it very difficult.
One of my favorite stories is if you go to our website and kind of look through the information, there's a lot up there that'll say, qualifications, 2 years in business, $1 million in revenue, multiple projects going on, which is certainly the case most of the time, right? But there's no typical job. There's no typical person. And one of my favorite stories is I have a really good client. We started in conversations. They were just starting out, no financials, no bank statements. They did have a good contract, and they just wanted help building a cash flow because they saw that tool. We spent 2 months going back and forth, working through the cash flows, kind of, doing all that. I get the sense right away, really good operator, not a typical client of MF, didn't know if we could help or not. But once we finally got the cash flows in a good place, realized they had some cash on hand, we could probably lean into it, a little tighter than we normally do, and just start a relationship. So if he just looked at our website and looked at qualifications, nothing would ever happen. But really the relationship started on us, him trusting in us to help him with a cash flow to kind of figure out how much cash he needed to get that job off. Right. And that's really kind of what the basis of everything happened on.
That's cool. And then ultimately we were able to make a loan for them and get the cash flow squared away. But it took, I think you worked with them for at least 7, 8, 9 months prior to funding, prior to them ever looking for a loan. They just needed help. Yeah. They figured it out through the normal conventional ways.
Yeah. And again,
grinding it.
You're grinding on that, but it's a relationship, great character, it all kind of works itself out.
You mentioned report card, and I know the conversation you're talking about, and one of those things I would say is it's really hard I look at our financials on a monthly basis, or any business owner that's talking about their financials, you look at them on a monthly basis, almost like your report card. How are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know how you're doing, it's really difficult to know, 1, how you're doing, 2, how you're doing to your plan, 3, what do you do to get to where you want to go? And that's assuming you know where you want to go, you know what you want to do. Everyone has some goal, whether you've illustrated them or not. You probably have an idea of where you'd hope to get to. Now, goal setting and putting that down on paper and drawing a plan backwards to get to that is something for another podcast. But your report card, always month to month, is giving you an idea on your financials of where you are to your metrics and how you can then help benefit your team, benefit your customers, benefit yourself, and execute on your process. And so that's why that's one of the things I always said is like, without financials, it's like, how do you know? Okay, cool. You don't need your financials. Great. Okay, well, tell me how you're measuring yourself.
Yeah.
Then how do you know what you're doing?
How do you know what you need help with?
Correct. Yeah. All right. Couple rapid fire questions for you, right?
Okay.
What's the best advice you've received that pertains to business?
So I actually think it probably goes back to the same basketball court here in Tampa. Met a guy, and he had run a couple of businesses, and he told me when I told him about like my journey, my search, what I was trying to do. He's like, "There's only 2 ways to make money: own something or sell something." Those are two ways, and you gotta have balls to own something. So just find something really good to sell if you don't have that.
Who was that?
Mark Weldon.
Oh yeah,
do you remember Mark?
Yes, I do.
Mark, if you're out there, still think about you. And the mailbox you gave me.
That dude sold a lot of mailboxes.
Yes, he did.
What's the most bold or adventurous thing you've ever done?
Probably moved to Tampa.
Originally,
the first time, yeah. Because then after that, like every other step made that much easier. Like again, like I was kind of chasing my career in sports, so I was moving every 4 years. Kind of like when you're working in sports and sports sales, it's kind of like coaching. In order to move up the ladder, you have to usually move to a team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always difficult, and really it was really difficult. My wife, after especially after we had kids. So I would say like that's always been there. And even this, like I joined you, 2-3 years ago, like weren't sure what this is. Like I just was like, hey, I trust Scott. I know it's gonna work out.
Yeah, you trust me and one fax machine, and we're good to
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right, favorite book of all time.
I would probably say Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell.
It's a good book.
Yeah. And for me, like really what it was is it reinforced, I think, the ideas that I already had. And I mean, listen, a lot of the sales books, a lot of things that you read and consume and like kind of, help you, it's just reinforcing the things you already think, right? Like Hopefully, yes, yeah. And sometimes you need that reminder. Sometimes you need to get like recentered. And I always took away like the 10,000 hour rule as something that was really kind of important to me and like my development. And in order to become the book basically says in order to become an expert at something like the Beatles, like NHL superstars, not Tim Cook, Apple.
Oh, Bill Gates.
Programmer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a crazy story. Like Bill Gates grew up in an area that had one of the only supercomputers. He used to sneak out like at midnight till 6 a.m. coding.
Because his dad was
for free. Yeah, like just coding by himself, like for hours and hours and hours. He didn't have a goal. He didn't have a purpose. He just liked doing it. Mm-hmm. But I think kind of going through that and learning from my experience, like my experience in Tampa, I still remember the first 3 calls I made as a ticket sale rep for the Lightning. I could not even get through a voicemail. Hung up immediately. And like that was the beginning. 10,000 hours later, I got pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And I realized like you just have to be consistent. You have to be committed. You have to just keep on grinding on it, and it's all going to figure itself out.
Yeah, there's no easy process. The thing I learned from that book the most, aside from a lot of like little specific stories there, was the main goal takeaway was nothing really happens on accident. Mm-hmm. There's very specific, deliberate, purposeful reasons why certain things that we somewhat deem might be luck or just random are not really random, and they're very specific. And so once you understand that, you can actually execute the play, and you then just they need time to work on your side, and You put enough time in, enough reps. There's no substitute for that.
I mean, look, we're getting older now, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole lot easier now to look back and say, oh, okay, I see why and I see how that worked. But as you're going through it, you have no idea.
No,
you have no idea. That's it.
Last question: crane, bulldozer, or excavator?
So which am I most like?
Which one you can answer it that way too, or like I was thinking, like if you're going to ride or play on one, which one do you want to ride and play on?
Because I was going to say, I really thought about basketball, so bulldozer.
Yeah, that was your style.
That's, and I think the way that I look at things now is probably crane, because I want that 50,000 foot view. I want to be up on top of it to kind of see and figure it all out. And I can go down and bulldoze if I need to.
Yeah. You do a lot with the crane.
Yeah, you can do a lot with the crane.
Swinging
thing moving things around, like putting things in the right places. But just a vantage point that I think that I have now, that I'm getting up there in years is looking at life that way.
That's cool. I love it. Well, dude, I'm glad that you were willing to take a couple steps down the hall, sit with me, go through this.
This is great.
Let people see what you're doing, what you're about, a little different perspective on MF from someone else. And so thank you.
I mean, if we just had 2 drinks in front of us, it'd just be like we were sitting in the bar.
It would be that good. We'll have to do that. We'll actually have to do that next time. Yeah. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 others and we'll just all like share some common stories. That could be a good shot.
That's perfect.
All right. Well, everybody, I hope you had a great day. I hope you enjoyed this banter back and forth between me and my good friend Joe. And in the meantime, please click subscribe, share our show with everybody. Don't forget the cash flow tool that's on our website. And we wish you the best day and a great week. And God bless you.